It's the Metro on WDET. I'm Robin Vincent. About 1 month ago, Israel and America struck Iran. Now Israel has enmeshed itself in more violence. In Iran, about 1,500 people have been killed. Over 1,000 people have been killed in Lebanon. Settler violence against Palestinians has been ratcheted up in the West Bank. And in Israel, as of 1 week ago, a dozen Israelis had been killed from Iranian airstrikes. Now, in the midst of all of this, a man drove a truck into Temple Israel in West Bloomfield. The attacker killed himself before he hurt anyone at the synagogue. All of this has us wondering, how are Metro Detroit Jews processing this moment? How are their politics changing or not? Aaron Bergman is a rabbi at Adat Shalom, a synagogue in Farmington Hills. He spoke with producer Sam Corey about this.
I wonder how you're doing and the folks around you are doing after the recent attack on Temple Israel.
I think the shock of it is slowly wearing off, but that means the reality of it is hitting. But what I did share with the congregation, which has been the amazing amount of outreach from the non-Jewish community and within the Jewish community of just a lot of support, and that's been very powerful. I mean, that Temple Israel is this main part of the Jewish community in so many ways. My congregation is only a couple miles away. I'm friendly with all the clergy there. So it was absolutely shocking, but to see how everyone rallied around the Chaldean community was beyond beautiful and helping out. But the larger community, Christian, Muslim, the secular, so it's incredibly painful, but it feels a little less scary than it did on Thursday.
Can you detail that a little bit for me? What has the support looked like?
Well, when this happened, the Shenandoah Country Club is right across the street from Temple Israel, and that's where the Chaldean Cultural Center is. And they immediately opened their doors to all the people there and fed them and made them feel safe. And I heard from ministers and imams I hadn't heard from in a little while. And, people were just sort of reaching out and checking in, like on a very human level. There's a lot of fear and a lot of anger. And this wasn't the first incident. There have been so many things, but I think that they've all been covered as sort of isolated incidents and not realizing how many there have been and how much it touches the entire Jewish community. I actually had people from Israel saying, "Oh, we're so worried about you guys. We hope you're okay."
I'm wondering what the connections are like at your synagogue at Adat Shalom to Israel. Do you have members that have friends and family members living in Israel? Do they have folks who are currently serving in the IDF, the Israeli Defense Force? Like, what are the connections like from Adat Shalom to Israel and to Israelis?
Yeah, there have been very deep connections really since the beginning of the congregation in 1943. So many people have family. Even myself, my nephew and his wife, they had a baby, and the bris was in a bomb shelter, but they still had it. There are some people serving in the IDF. People have family. People have friends. The congregation has always had a connection to Israel, but also, it's important to have a real relationship. You have to be honest and open about things as well. So,
tell me a little bit more about that. Yeah, what are the relationships and that honesty look like?
In any real relationship, you're able to say, this makes me comfortable, this makes me uncomfortable. These are our values. We hope that you live up to them, that we live up to them. How can we help each other in good ways? What's important is that we're very supportive of Israel, and Israelis have been very supportive of us, but it doesn't mean we agree with every single thing our governments do.
I'm wondering how people have been reacting to America and Israel strikes on Iran and Israel strikes on Lebanon. Like, what are the things that you're hearing from folks? What's the range of perspectives?
I think some of it is based on how long your historical perspective is. If this is your 15th conflict, you're going to have one set of eyes. And if this is your first, you're going to have another set. older people always say young people don't care anymore, and young people always say old people don't get it. And the fact is, young people care enormously, and some older people actually do get it. For the older members at this point were born either around the time of the Holocaust or not much time after. They know all the early attempts at destroying the state of Israel. They know how long Israel was vulnerable in so many ways and experienced a lot of the anti-Semitism that used to be in this area with Jewish quotas, with the broadcast from Henry Ford and others about the international Jew. Like, they remember an intense vulnerability and isolation of the Jewish community. Whereas if you're younger, you kind of grew up with Israel as a very strong country which didn't seem to be under threat. And so they wonder, why is this very powerful country doing what it is doing, whereas the older ones are, how could this very vulnerable country not do what it's doing? And they both have points, and the problem, the challenge is trying to get people to talk to each other.
Do people talk to each other? Like, we live in a very polarized time, and we live in a time where people feel very uncomfortable disagreeing with one another. Are people in your congregation actually having open conversations? Are you facilitating these? Are these things happening? Or is it really just people kind of like sitting and stewing and feeling uncomfortable? And your job as a rabbi is really just to hold space so people can hold each other, but not necessarily dialogue about this stuff.
I would say yes to all of it. When we talk about differences of opinion, even within individuals, there are differences of opinions. People trying to wrestle their own ambivalence. So we do create spaces for people to talk. And I have a wonderful colleague, Rabbi Blair Nosenwich, who's been facilitating some conversations. It's really about focusing on liberal Jews who are also Zionists, which is in an increasingly narrow space in many ways, but trying to have some of these dialogues. I talk about it a lot in my sermons. I actually said in one sermon, tell me your anxiety, I'll tell you your age. The older people are so worried that if Israel disappears, the Jewish people will disappear. And younger people are, we can still be Jewish and Israel maybe be an aspect of it, and we can still be Jewish without Israel. I think that there is a group who says without Israel, there's going to be another Holocaust. And there are younger Jews who say, no, we can be who we are regardless. I think it's also a willingness to embrace power. I find that if you're willing to see that having power is always going to be messy, but it's important to have power and agency in your life, then you'll embrace the messiness. And then there are those who just want pure morality and are willing to give up power because power is exceedingly messy.
Do you see anybody who appreciates power, appreciates the stability that power affords, but is wary of power corrupting? In some sense, they want to hold both of what you're saying. They want power, of course, they want agency, but they also don't want to weaponize that power against those who have less of it.
Yeah, and I think those are the best kind of leaders, personally. And I think that those are the only kind of people who should be leaders. People who love power for the sake of power terrify me. And people who won't embrace any kind of power because of the messiness, then you don't get to be part of the conversation. You're just going to be on the sidelines. I want someone who has power and loses sleep every single night over how to use it properly. That, I think, is the ideal.
This is The Metro on WDET Detroit Public Radio. I'm Sam Corey, speaking with Rabbi Aaron Bergman of Adat Shalom, which is a synagogue in Farmington Hills. We're discussing how his congregation is processing Israel and America's wars in the Middle East and increased Israeli settler violence in the West Bank. How do you see yourself in this space and of disagreement about the state of Israel and American Jewish connection to Israel? Are you forthcoming about your opinions, or are you someone who says, actually, that matters a little less so? I mean, I want Jews to be doing well anywhere they exist, but it's really more important that I'm sort of holding this together, and that doesn't necessarily mean leading with my own perspective.
Yeah, I mean, I do share perspectives, but I don't talk necessarily about specific leaders or specific policies. I talk very much about history and values, about how we got here, what the founding of the State of Israel is about. I quote very often from Israel's Declaration of Independence and from some of the early teachings of the vision of what Israel was supposed to be ideally. But I also talk about how we've been a presence in the land for 3,000 years, that we are not a bunch of colonialists from Europe.
You gave the perspective of the indigeneity of Jews to the land of Israel, the land of Palestine. I guess I wonder what you make then of that other perspective. As the nation state of Israel is created, Jews are settlers because they settled in this place and displaced people, and there was violence and bloodshed and what have you. What do you make of that perspective? Do you think there's nothing to it, or do you just think it's not the whole picture?
I think it's not the whole picture. I mean, part of the problem is everyone's got their own narrative. Everyone's got their own myth. I think the word indigenous has also been weaponized in a lot of ways. There are very few people who are indigenous. They may have been there for a long time, and I don't want to take away from that. But, this idea that one group is specifically indigenous. People essentially say that Jews are indigenous nowhere and that we belong nowhere. When we were in Europe, we were told, go back to the Middle East. In the Middle East, we were told to go back to Europe, even though half the Jews, at least, who live in Israel are from other Muslim countries and came to Israel. The challenge, I think, really is how do you respect each other's narratives and not try to erase the other side. But, the question is, are we a settler or are we returning? The Jewish view for us is that we've returned to the land that we were forcibly expelled from even before there was Christianity and Islam. Part of the incredible pain that we experience, not just as my congregation or as the community here, is that everyone gets to define what is anti-Semitic except for Jews. I've talked about it with a number of colleagues, is that the anti-Semites on the right, they own their anti-Semitism. They're proud of it. They love it. The anti-Semites of the left tell us they're not really anti-Semites and that we're being oversensitive and that we're colonialists.
What is anti-Semitism from the left?
Well, part of it would be you guys are settlers, so you have no right to be there at all, or that there's no right to a Jewish state, and they're not saying that any other country that has a very specific religion or nationality as its dominant thing, not saying that they don't have a right to exist. When you're only picking on one country for its national identity and no others, that's a problem. But what bothers me is when someone says that's not anti-Semitism. I would never tell people of other races or ethnicities or religions what is hateful to them. If someone tells me, what you just said was really racist, even if I didn't think it was, I would have to say to myself, what, maybe I don't get to define someone else's identity, but I find so many people outside the Jewish community feel they have a right to tell me who I am.
Well, let's move to something else you talked about earlier, which is listening to the other side without trying to vanquish it.
Yeah.
What does that look like, and how are y'all trying to practice that?
We have a number of interfaith things that we do, and we have a wonderful connection with a particular mosque in Farmington Hills that we've been very close with. But a lot of the interfaith dialogue really suffered the last couple of years, and it's really trying to hold the congregations together because there's a lot of splits, right, left, and middle, and trying to say, look, we're still one people, because I think the better we function within, the better we can handle working with other people. One of the challenges is how do you make peace with people who can't make peace with each other?
What does intra-faith dialogue look like? Like, what does, I guess it goes back to an earlier question I had about holding space for folks who disagree with you, but who maybe, look more similar to you, who sound more similar to you, who believe things more broadly, more similar to you. I'm curious about your thoughts on whether this is even a time for just hear out differences of opinion, or if you think this is just a time that's so raw that it's more important just to hold space for each other.
Yeah, I think that's part of it. when people are in maximal stress, it's hard to sit down and really have a rational conversation of, why don't you look this way? Why don't you look at that way? Can you see their perspective? I think when things are calmer, you can do that better. And in times of stress, you try to keep people from doing really destructive stuff or from saying things that they will regret later. Look, we have Passover coming up, and people are really worried about getting together with their own family. Is Uncle Bob going to say something and ruin it? Is Aunt Sheila going to say something back? People are very tense just within their own families. Like, it's not even the congregations alone are seeing these kinds of splits, but within families, there are some people not even getting together or talking to each other. Because of it, it's been very stressful. I mean, look, we went from COVID to October 7th to this. It's been a lot for people. And there's still births and deaths and weddings and all the normal stresses of life on top of this. And so I'm really trying to help people handle things in a good way so they can make better decisions.
I think someone at your congregation is talking about or exploring liberal Zionism. I found that really interesting because liberal Zionism has really taken a hit in the United States. A lot of liberals are more skeptical of Zionism. And I'll say in Israel itself, the liberal project is really not doing well. I mean, the political right is in charge, and it's the right listening to the further right, not really listening to liberals, as was true in the 90s and the early 2000s. And I guess I just wonder what these conversations are about liberal Zionism, again, in a time when a lot of people are shying away from it.
Right. The left has abandoned it and the right has abandoned it. That's certainly the left in America and the right in Israel. But there's still people doing it. I mean, things go in cycles. I think that if you look at this within a narrow lens, it looks pretty bleak. If you look at it over the course of history, it actually will cycle back. I believe America hopefully will cycle back toward a more middle approach in some ways as well. It's still an important voice that needs to be heard, and I am hoping that when things are more peaceful, that these ideas emerge again in a good way.
Rabbi Aaron Bergman of Adat Shalom in Farmington Hills. It's the Metro on WDET. I'm Robin Vincent, and we want to hear from you. If something on today's show made you think, made you feel something, or made you want to push back, tell us. This show is a conversation, and conversations work better when you're in them. Send us your story ideas. Tell us what we're missing. Tell us what's happening in your neighborhood, in your workplace, in your family. Email metro@wdet.org or leave us a voice memo. Open up the WDET mobile app and hit the microphone. We listen to every single one, and your voice might end up on the air. That's metro@wdet.org or the WDET mobile app. And of course, you're listening to the Metro on WDET, but we've got a lot of other reasons to tune in. The Detroit Evening Report is WDET's daily podcast focused on news for and about Metro Detroit's communities of color. From the news in your city to the news in your neighborhood, we'll keep you informed. Listen to the Detroit Evening Report at WDET.org or subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. And tonight on WDET, one of my favorite shows, The Boulevard with Wajid. House, techno, electro, everything that moves. Wajid is a Detroit East Side original, DJ, producer, founder of the Underground Music Academy, and a key figure in the city's dance music legacy. Don't miss a single track, a single show. Listen to The Boulevard tonight from 8 to 10 p.m. on 101.9 FM. You can stream it live or catch it on demand at WDET.org. Coming up on the Metro in the next hour. First, we look at birth control. While it does exist for men, the focus on it has generally been on women. Or rather, I should say, the onus has been on women. But what options exist for men? And how have those options been changing? And then later, with the end of the NBA regular season coming to, the Pistons are going back to the playoffs this year. But many are concerned as Cade Cunningham is out with an injury. Can they keep it going? We'll explore what their chances are for a run at the championship. That's all coming up next here on the Metro. Stay with us. This is WDET-FM, Detroit Public Radio, your connection to news, music, and conversation.